Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a right that feels so fundamental, you'd think it was set in stone, the right to vote. But as we're about to see, this right wasn't just handed out. Nope, it was fought for, inch by inch, through a long history full of incredible progress and, yeah, some pretty major setbacks. It seems like a simple question, doesn't it? Who gets to vote? But in the United States, the answer to that question has been a moving target from day one. It's been constantly debated, redefined, and fought over since the very beginning of the country. I mean, just look at the difference. When the Republic was founded, the franchise, that's the right to vote, was incredibly exclusive. In most places, you had to be a white man, over 21, and you had to own property. That was it. Now, fast forward to today, and we have something close to universal suffrage for all citizens over 18. The change is absolutely staggering, and the story of how we got from there to here, well, that's really the story of America itself. And this quote from our source material just hits the nail on the head. This whole story isn't some straight, easy line of progress. It's more like a cycle. A big push forward for expansion, followed by some really powerful resistance and setbacks. And then, the next big push. All right, so let's dive into that first century. This is where you see those big, lofty ideals of a new democracy just slam right into the harsh reality of who was actually included in that famous phrase, "we the people." So, in the early decades, you do see this slow, steady expansion. State by state, those old property requirements for white men started to fall away. But the really seismic shifts, the big ones, they weren't going to come from quiet debates. They were forged in the fire of the nation's greatest conflict, the Civil War. And right after the war, you get this incredible rapid-fire succession of constitutional amendments. The 13th, abolishing slavery. The 14th, guaranteeing equal protection. And then the 15th in 1870, which says point blank that the right to vote can't be denied because of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. It was a truly revolutionary moment. But, and this is a huge but, that revolutionary promise was met with an immediate and really brutal backlash. As soon as Reconstruction ended, states, especially in the South, rolled out a whole toolkit of laws designed to snatch that vote right back from black men. We're talking about things like poll taxes, literacy tests that were basically impossible to pass, and super strict residency rules. All of it was designed to do one thing: disenfranchise. And get this, for almost 100 years, this whole system was basically given a green light by the Supreme Court. Rulings in cases like U.S. v. Reese and Williams v. Mississippi effectively said that the 15th Amendment didn't stop states from making these kinds of discriminatory rules. It just completely gutted the amendment's original intent, leaving millions of American citizens without any voice in their own government. But the fight, of course, was far from over. As we head into the 20th century, all those decades of struggle and activism finally start to pay off, leading to a series of huge, game-changing victories that would totally reshape the American electorate all over again. First up, the 19th Amendment. After generations, literally generations of marches, protests, and tireless advocacy, the Constitution was finally changed in 1920. This was a massive expansion of the vote, bringing millions and millions of American women to the polls for the very first time. Then, in 1964, another one of those old tools of disenfranchisement gets knocked down. The 24th Amendment bans the poll tax in federal elections. And you have to understand, this wasn't just some small fee. It was a deliberate economic barrier designed for decades to keep poor voters, both black and white, away from the ballot box. And that brings us to what a lot of people call the single most effective piece of civil rights legislation in American history, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. This landmark law finally gave the 15th Amendment some real teeth. It struck down those literacy tests and put the federal government in charge of overseeing elections in places with a history of discrimination. This whole wave of progress really culminates in 1971. With the Vietnam War raging, a powerful argument took hold all across the country. Old enough to fight, old enough to vote. That sentiment was unstoppable, and it led directly to the 26th Amendment, which lowered the voting age from 21 to 18 and enfranchised an entire generation of young Americans. Okay, so that brings us right up to the modern era. And while the right to vote is broader than it has ever been, the fight over who gets to vote and how easy it is to do so, well, it is far from over. The battlegrounds have just shifted. A perfect example is the intense debate over voter ID laws.
On one side, you have supporters who argue they're just a common sense way to prevent fraud and protect the integrity of our elections. But on the other side, opponents worry that these strict ID rules can act as a new kind of barrier, making it harder for the elderly, the poor, and minority citizens, people who might not have the specific required ID to vote. It's that classic tension between security and access.
Another hot-button issue, which this table lays out really well, is felon disenfranchisement. For a long time, many states would permanently ban anyone with a felony conviction from ever voting again. Now, the trend has been shifting toward reform, with most states restoring rights after a sentence is served. But it still begs that fundamental question. At what point is a citizen's debt to society considered fully paid?
And finally, believe it or not, the actual machines we use to vote have become a huge point of contention. Remember the disputed presidential election back in 2000? After that, there was a huge push to go digital. But these new electronic systems brought their own set of worries about security, about reliability, and about whether you can even do a meaningful recount if there's no paper trail to follow.
So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, if there's one thing this history teaches us, it's that the rules of voting are never really settled. The fight to define who gets a say in our democracy and how they get to use that voice is a constant, ongoing, and absolutely central part of the whole American experiment. From property owners to poll taxes, from Reconstruction to voter registration, this winding road of voting rights just keeps on stretching out in front of us. The journey we've just looked at is a powerful reminder that progress is never given, and it leaves us with the one crucial question we all have to think about. What's the next stop on the road for the right to vote?